Oki Nixukwa. My name is Inge Gene Kini Taneko Pitaki. Welcome to my online Blackfoot grammar course. In this lesson, we take a look at Blackfoot writing systems and introduce the standard orthography. The world's languages can be written in three major ways, with pictographs, syllabaries, and alphabets. Blackfoot has been written in all of these ways. Pictographs are symbols derived from pictures or images. They're also called pictograms. This kind of writing system uses symbols to represent objects, concepts, or whole words. We see many pictographs or pictograms in public spaces, such as washroom signs, exit and entry signs, warning signs, and on social media, such as emojis. Blackfoot people used pictographs to record important events on surfaces such as rocks and hides. Each pictograph usually represents an entire event, or a few of them together represent a complex event. Blackfoot historians used pictographs written on hides to create winter counts. These were often written in a circular or spiral form, with each pictograph representing the most important event that happened in that year. A second type of writing system uses symbols to represent syllables. A syllable is a unit of speech that you can find by tapping on a table or clapping your hands while speaking, and each tap or clap is then one syllable. For instance, if you clap your hands while slowly saying horizon, then you will discover that the word horizon has 3 syllables. Syllabic writing systems are called syllabaries. Examples are the Japanese hiragana script and the Cherokee, Cree, and Inuktitut syllabaries. Blackfoot can also be written with a syllabic script or syllabary. Each symbol represents a whole syllable. The Blackfoot syllabary is often called Blackfoot syllabics. One version is derived from the Ojibwe syllabics designed by James Evans. John William Timms, an Anglican missionary who worked in Blackfoot country in the late 19th century, adapted the Ojibwe syllabary for Blackfoot and used it to translate a number of biblical texts. Some people still use syllabics to write and to teach Blackfoot. In the 1950s, a number of people in Siksika were very fluent in its use. It is used by the Glenbow Museum Education Program in Calgary, Alberta, and at Red Crow Community College on the Kainai Nation in Alberta to teach the language. You can find other examples of the use of Blackfoot syllabics online. The third type of writing system uses symbols to represent individual sounds. Ideally, each sound is represented by a different symbol. We call these symbols letters, and the set of letters is often called an alphabet. The type of alphabet used for writing English is often called Roman orthography. There are other alphabetic systems, such as the Cyrillic script used for Russian and related languages, and the Arabic script used for Arabic and other languages throughout Africa and Asia. Several alphabets for Blackfoot were designed by outsiders. Some people who did this kind of work are Constantine Scollin, John McLean, John William Timms, Jack Holterman, and Donald G. France. In this course, we adopt the alphabet designed by Donald France. Before we look at that in more detail, we need to understand a few important differences between writing European languages and writing indigenous languages. Most European alphabets were developed organically. This happens when speakers of a language start to write their own language. They often adopt a writing system from another language and adapt it to fit the sounds of their own language. European languages were first written by speakers of those languages. They adapted the existing Roman alphabet that was used to write Latin to write the sounds of their own language. They repurposed and recombined letters to fit the sounds of their language. They deleted some letters or added new letters or put diacritics on existing letters. Diacritics are small additions to letters that indicate a slightly different pronunciation. An example is the little squiggly called a tilde that we put over the letter N to represent the Spanish sound ñ, which is a palatal nasal. When writing systems develop organically, people simply write what they think they hear or how they would say it themselves, and they don't worry about consistency, at least not in the beginning. For early European languages, there was no such thing as a standard spelling, so there was no such thing as a spelling error. Standardization took centuries. When the pronunciation of sounds changed over time, the old spelling often remained, so that spelling and pronunciation don't match anymore. The result of this kind of history is often a bit of a hodgepodge. We can see this in English. Some letters now have multiple different pronunciations. For instance, the letter A is pronounced differently in the words about, apple, and grape. Orthographies for indigenous languages are often deliberately designed. Many of them are created not by speakers of the language, but by outsiders, such as linguists, anthropologists, and missionaries, who came to the community to study the language and the culture or to do missionary work. When linguists make orthographies, they immediately try to be as consistent as possible. They want to avoid the kinds of irregularities and inconsistencies that we see in English. The goal is to have a one-to-one match between sounds and letters. This means that as much as possible, we write each sound always with the same letter, and it also means that each letter always has the same pronunciation. The result is that such writing systems often stay pretty close to the phonetic transcriptions from the International Phonetic Alphabet. There's also usually much emphasis on standardization from the beginning because people want to use the written form for educational materials. The Blackfoot standard orthography was designed in the 1960s and 1970s by the late linguist Don France. His goal was to design an alphabet that would correctly represent all the sounds of Blackfoot. He also wanted it to be easy to use on typewriters and to print in books or magazines with existing technology so that no special equipments or fonts would be needed. He therefore chose to use letters from the Roman alphabet that were already used to write English without any diacritic marks. He only added one character, and that's the apostrophe that is used to represent the glottal stop. The apostrophe is not a letter in the Roman alphabet, but it is generally available on typewriters and now, of course, also on computers, so it's easy to use. It's used in the writing systems of many other indigenous languages to represent the same sound. The Blackfoot standard orthography was designed based on an analysis of the Blackfoot sound system. The way in which Blackfoot is written therefore stays closer to the phonetic analysis using the IPA than is the case for languages such as English. Such a phonetically designed writing system should in theory be really easy to learn and use. But for many people, the Blackfoot standard orthography is in fact not so easy. Why would that be? There are a few reasons. First of all, most people are familiar with the English alphabet. English is actually one of the worst models of orthography around. It is full of irregularities and inconsistencies. Second, many people who want to learn to write Blackfoot are not native speakers of the language. They speak English as their first or main language and Blackfoot as their secondary language. Many people are not fluent. If you're not fluent in a language, you don't always have reliable intuitions about its sounds, and that makes it extra hard to write it correctly. Third, there's not a lot of Blackfoot writing in our environment to serve as a model. Think of the French words that you might know because you see them on your cereal box or your milk jug every day. We don't have this kind of exposure to written Blackfoot nearly as much. We have no models of written Blackfoot words for our brains to get used to just by seeing them again and again in our daily lives. Fourth, there's quite a bit of variation in how Blackfoot words are pronounced by different speakers. There's variation between the dialects, between individual speakers, and even between the same speaker at different times. And how do we know which pronunciation we should write? And last, the letters in the Blackfoot alphabet are not always pronounced in exactly the same way. They have small variations depending on where the sound occurs in a word and on the dialect of the speaker. For these reasons and others, the Blackfoot alphabet can be pretty challenging to learn for many people, even though it was designed to be easy. If you find that you're struggling, please remember that it takes young children a few years to learn how to write their mother tongue. You may be trying to learn how to write Blackfoot while also learning to speak and understand it. That is a double task. It's important to give it time and be patient with yourself and just keep practicing. That's it for today. Shoot me an email if you have any questions or comments. You can find our online dictionary, story archive, resources, and recordings of almost 400 conversational phrases in 3 dialects on the Blackfoot Language Resources website at blackfoot.algonquianlanguages.ca.